Hello listeners, and thanks for tuning in to Buffalo Lab Radio Free. I'm your host, Eunice Randall. I'd like to extend a special thank you for sticking with us through our recent hiatus and an apology for how long we've been off the air. I had a number of things come up in my life recently, including the chance to move to Tokyo for a month. But now I'm back in the Queen City, and the good news is that some really good work went down in the foundry while I was gone, so now my studio area here is a permanent space. So now I'm hoping that I'll be broadcasting with a lot more regularity. As you may recall, my first episode of the show was about my adventures at World Maker Faire in New York City, so you can imagine my excitement to be involved with the first annual Buffalo Mini Maker Faire, which was held at the Buffalo Museum of Science this past March. It was a phenomenal event. We had an amazing turnout, especially for a first-time fair. Like I said, it was hosted by the Science Museum, but the Buffalo Lab and the Foundry got to help out a lot. There was a whole section in the makers area called the Foundry Village, where a lot of the foundry artisans got to show off their crafts, and Buffalo Lab had a table there too. I had a really great time working and talking to people about the lab and finding out what kind of projects they were working on. Buffalo Lab also helped out with the soldering workshop at the fair, which was awesome to see the next generation learning and getting excited about making. But yeah, it had everything I love about Maker Faire, awesome makers, exciting technology, and a really fun and interactive time for kids. And I was lucky enough to get to sit down with Doug Borzynski, who planned and supervised the whole fair, at the Buffalo Museum of Science where he works, and talk to him about the event. Hi, thanks for being on the show.
My pleasure. It's about time.
So, what was your introduction to the Maker Faire and maker culture?
When it comes to making, I remember back when Apple IIe came out in the high school, actually middle school, I took mine apart in my classroom. The teachers yelling at me, like, that's a brand new machine. I took it apart. I'm like, So, I've been making for a while, but really make was when the Buffalo Museum of Science had the science spot on Elmwood, is that the manager over there, Jamie Saltosi, gave me issue number 3 of Make Magazine, and that is my first real movement, like, hey, there are other people like me out there. And since then, it's slowly been building up till finally we got a Maker Faire this year.
And, well, how do you think that go? What was your overall impression of the fair?
I loved it. I gotta say, I was a little nervous. Signing the contract took the longest amount of time, and once I signed the contract, I had like 107 days, basically.
Wow.
Yeah, so we put together a pretty decent Maker Faire in 107 days. And really, it's because of Buffalo Labs and the Foundry. Once they came on board, once they signed the contract, I had like 12 people right away. I knew we had a fair. From there, I could plug in the rest of the holes, but it wasn't for them coming on board so fast. I'm not sure it would have been half the job it was, or half as big as it was,
Well, I was really impressed with it. I had a great time. I know the people from Buffalo Lab and the Foundry Village were really excited about it.
Do you know what the best part about the makers are? Is that they know how to bring in their equipment, set it up, and clean up. By the time I got from the 4th floor to make sure everyone was done and had a good time, the makers already left the building. But speaking of which, we saw people coming in the door at 3 o'clock paying full admission to come to the Maker Faire.
Wow.
That closed at 4. And they were still very happy. Yeah, that is a great standard to hold to a Maker Faire.
Absolutely.
Make Magazine, of course, came on board. They were great. I didn't realize quite the difference between a mini Maker Faire and a large Maker Faire, like the New York City World Maker Faire. I went there last year. It was amazing. I went to the Pittsburgh Mini Maker Faire before that. And that's kind of more in scale what we're doing. We're a local hackerspace. The Pittsburgh hackerspace came in and supported them. Here at Buffalo Labs, the Foundry came and supported us. And then we just put the call out on the internet, and it's amazing who showed up. We had a lot of 3D printers. We had a lot of some circuits and things like that. I think the soldering course up here,
right?
The circuit bending, the take it apart from Rochester. Those guys they made the fair in the center there.
Absolutely, I met them at World Maker Faire last year, and they are great.
I'd recommend them to other fairs too. So if you get any calls, sorry.
What was the most exciting part about the fair for you?
That it worked, and it worked really well. You plan for everything. I wanted our local Damon guy with the fire effects to be on the front, so when you drove down 33, you see the fireball. I'll have to save that for next year, though. But some things didn't work out. I couldn't get the permit in time for that.
Right.
But the fact that everything came in It worked smoothly, but I think what we had was a perfect flow that it seemed like the audience and the things I got back from our museum visitors is that it flowed very nicely. They didn't have to wait too long at any particular station. They got to do what they wanted. It was spread out throughout all the museums. They got to see a lot of different things. The t-shirt silk-screening guys in the basement all the way up to the girls develop it in the 4th floor.
Definitely. I mean, I was there all day, and you're naming stuff I didn't even get to see. It was too much.
It's great. Next year will be even more. We're hoping to do it again end of May, early June.
Yeah, what do we have? Is there anything specific that we have to look forward to, hopefully, in the next year?
I'm hoping that next year I'm going to I also run Junior Solar Sprint event, which kids build and design a car in the middle school.
Oh, cool.
I'm hoping to have the competition during the event as like a show-off this year. And then in 2 years from now, it'll be open to the public, and they'll be able to design the Junior Solar Sprint vehicles. Cool. And we'll have that race in Hamlin Hall going right down the center, and then still have everything in the tag and exploded hopefully out into the park as well with the catapults and all those people who do stuff at the Chunkin' Pumpkin in Clarence.
Right.
What they do the rest of the year. Let's bring them out here. I have Martin Luther King Park, and we hopefully chumping some pumpkins. And then the day of too, we still would love the Foundry and that to expand as a second site too, that we can really do all this, because we're thinking about a 2-day event too, a Saturday and Sunday.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about how the Buffalo Museum of Science was involved at the fair?
It's interesting because the Buffalo Mini Maker Faire is slightly its own thing. They had their own website and all that. All the things went through the Mini Maker Faire, which was me, Doug Borzynski. And then Doug Borzynski at the Buffalo Museum of Science also had to coordinate the Buffalo Museum and our sponsors in our list. And unfortunately, with 107 days, we didn't get very good sponsorship turnout. Hopefully next year with more time and now that people know what it is, which was a tough part, is people didn't know what making was. Once we got past that hurdle, next year I think will be bigger and better. But then the museum came on board, gave us the space. It ties into the mission of the Buffalo Museum of Science too, inspiring curiosity through exploration. As we're redoing the whole museum the next 5 years, we're about halfway through it actually. We're redoing all the floors. So I actually have a new studio here at the Buffalo Museum of Science, my little makeshift studio sponsored by National Grid. So they came on board to support me, where I have 3D printers, a laser engraver, these great work tables, soldering irons, tools, drill press, all the tools behind me, thanks to National Grid. And even today, I had a school group in here today, and we were designing and building foam race cars that then race in my InMotion studio, which is my physics hands-on laws of motion studio here at the museum. So it's just an extension thereof. It's letting kids come in and design and get their own ideas and come here. And I think it's a great partnership too, that the museum, we can't have kids up to about age 12 or so. I'm trying to go 12 to 14, 16 years old. And then at that point, they're old enough to go out to the Foundry and the Buffalo Labs and start really building and creating on their own. So I think there's a great synergy here in Buffalo that the museum is definitely supporting and being a big part of.
It's great to get the kids involved, and Maker Faire was a great event for kids. I came with a 9-year-old girl, and she loved it, and it was super great. So.
Yeah, my 9-year-old was operating a 3D printer for me.
Wow.
It was either that or paying for babysitting, but he's a maker now, so.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so he ran Aiden Cubed up here, and he just made rings all day long, and he loved it.
That's great.
I mean, it really is a center event, but the idea is make this like the keystone event for makers throughout the year, but then still have other things going on. I mean, we have so many great things coming on in Buffalo that to get them all together in something like this, I think we're just going to get bigger and better year after year.
Yeah, I was really impressed with Maker Faire, and the fact that it came together in such a short amount of time is really impressive. So.
Well, thank you. That's all me.
Well, thank you for all your work on it. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Well, my pleasure. And I look forward to seeing it. And more episodes.
Thanks.
And New York. We have to go to New York. World Maker Faire, the other end of the state,
Absolutely.
But it's still making here in New York.
Well, I'm going to be at Bay Area Maker Faire next week in San Francisco, which I'm very excited about, and I'm hoping to go back to New York in September too.
Yeah. I'll give you a stack of business cards to bring them back to Buffalo.
Okay.
Well, my pleasure.
Thanks so much. Well, thanks again for tuning in. Do you have a comment about this episode? Something to say about your experience at Buffalo Mini Maker Faire or another Maker Faire? Have an idea of something you'd like to see on the show? Just want to say hi? Email me at eunice@blrf.org. This is a community-based show, and we're always looking for new and different ideas and content. You can also follow me on Twitter at Radio Free Eunice or on Facebook or Tumblr at Buffalo Lab Radio Free. I'm already looking forward to hearing from you. Stay busy until our next broadcast.